All right, so Matthew chapter 8. Bit of a recap, I guess, of the themes we've been establishing in Matthew so far. Phrase that I like, that I've been using, is the book of Matthew emphasizes what we couldn't do. So specifically, as we look through the life of Jesus and the things that he does, it is a heavy emphasis on Old Testament prophecy and fulfillment of those things, specifically highlighting that Jesus is doing what we couldn't do. So the whole idea of the covenant in the Old Testament is that God saying to man, these are the things you need to do to have a relationship with me. These are the sacrifices, these are the laws you need to keep, this is the way you need to live. And despite all of that kind of direct interaction, the agreement to the covenant, all those things, man continually failed to live up to that. So Jesus comes and he does live up to that. He does what we couldn't do. And in so doing, establishes the veracity of God's covenant, that this was right, this is able to be kept, but he also fulfills it and shows that he can redeem us from that by giving his life there. And so that's really kind of the theme through the book. And so in the first couple chapters, you see that parallel to the Israelites that we've talked about. And we just finished the Sermon on the Mount, where Jesus stands on the mountain and delivers the law. And I think it summarizes, in the way that we've emphasized this, the good summary is the repeated phrase, "You have heard it said, but I say unto you," right? This is the law that you understood or that you were given, but this is how you need to understand it. It isn't that he's removing the law or getting rid of it. He is fulfilling it and focusing it, highlighting what they misunderstood about it. And so that's really at the heart of the Sermon on the Mount. But what's interesting is in verse 28 of Matthew 7, where it says, "When Jesus finished these sayings, the crowds were astonished at his teaching, for he was teaching them as one who had authority and not as their scribes." And we talked about that a little bit a couple weeks ago. But that really kind of summarizes this perspective that we should have on the things that Jesus taught, right? He spoke with authority. We recognize that. You know, you go to a class, subject matter expert, you can tell, right? In the corporate world, people love to say SMEs. Yeah, we need to set up an SME for this project, subject matter expert. I don't know why they have to say SME. I think they may think it makes them sound cool or something, but say that all the time. And the whole idea is that you are somebody in authority who understands everything and can address it. Well, here, talking about the law and talking about the things of God, Jesus wasn't somebody who was repeating something else. He spoke with authority as somebody who is the creator of such a law, right? You know, a lot of times you have a subject matter expert and they've studied it really well and they understand it really well. But then you talk to the person who actually created the thing, right? And there's a difference, right? Now there's real authority. You don't just understand it and can teach what they said. You created this. You are the guy who established this, whatever else. And there's a different level of understanding. And that's the way that Jesus is coming across. And that's important to highlight because it leads into really the theme that we see here in chapter 8. Let's go ahead and read the first two kind of stories here. We'll read the first 13 verses of Matthew 8, and we'll kind of build on that idea. So Matthew 8, verse 1. "When he came down from the mountain, great crowds followed him, and behold, a leper came to him and knelt before him, saying, 'Lord, if you will, you can make me clean.' And Jesus stretched out his hand and touched him, saying, 'I will be clean.' And immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, 'See that you say nothing to anyone, but go, show yourself to the priest, and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a proof to them.' When he had entered Capernaum, a centurion came forward to him, appealing to him, 'Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly.' And he said to him, 'I will come and heal him.' But the centurion replied, 'Lord, I am not worthy to have you come under my roof, but only say the word, and my servant will be healed. For I too am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. And I say to one, go, and he goes, and to another, come, and he comes, and to my servant, do this, and he does it.' And when Jesus heard this, he marveled, and said to those who followed him, 'Truly I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from east and west and recline at table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven, while the sons of the kingdom will be thrown into the outer darkness. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth.' And to the centurion, Jesus said, 'Go, let it be done for you as you have believed.' And the servant was healed at that very moment." Interesting. So, building on this idea of authority, what do you see in these two stories? Just help establish authority, How does it help establish authority? Maybe it was a bad question. I think it's a bad question. I don't know. Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, you write a book on, I don't know, curing some medical condition, right? You write a book on physical therapy for rehabbing a broken ankle. And you are the SME on healing broken ankles. And then somebody comes in with a broken ankle, and you can't fix their ankle. What does that say about your book? It's probably not very good. Then somebody else comes in with another broken ankle, and you can't help that person either. And it's like, oh boy. Book's probably not going to sell. But you write the book on he's helping somebody overcome a broken ankle, and they come in, and in record time, they are fully recovered. It's like, oh man, maybe there's something to this guy's book, right? And that's the idea here, right? You're going to sit here and you're going to tell people how to live, how to have a relationship with God. You're going to talk about what it means to have the right sort of relationship with God. You're going to talk about your perspective on life and the things that you seek. And then people come to you and you demonstrate that you truly have authority because you can heal diseases that are incurable. And the example of the centurion is even more poignant, right? Because the centurion specifically talks about authority, doesn't he? He says, look, I understand authority, and I understand what it's like to have somebody in authority over you and have people that you have authority over. You tell them what to do, and they do it. And I recognize that you have that kind of authority. You don't need to come. You have that kind of authority over all nature, which is marveling to Jesus that the centurion recognizes that, right? And we're going to see some more examples later in the chapter about this, but that's pretty remarkable that you can hear the words of Jesus here on the Sermon on the Mount. You can recognize that he speaks his authority, and then you can believe specifically that he has that authority. Not just to relay the things of God, but over the very fabric of the universe that you see. That you can see through and perceive the way that authority then affects the world itself. Do you recognize how amazing the faith of the centurion is here? Because it isn't like, you've seen something, it's like, okay, you can do it. I've seen you fix cars before, I know you can fix my car. It's like, no, I've heard you speak about automotives, right? And how they work. But I believe that you have so much authority that you can just speak to the car and it'll fix itself. There's a leap there, right? And maybe that's not the best analogy, but there's a little bit of that here that the centurion has. There's an authority that this man has over everything, as if speaking to servants and telling them what to do. The world is the servant of Jesus, is what he's acknowledging. That is unbelievably impressive. That he could say, no, you don't need to come. Don't waste your time coming. I understand authority and power, and I recognize that you have it. Just speak and he will be healed. Pretty impressive. And so I think in this chapter, what we're seeing are the examples that are establishing, both in 8 and in 9, really, we're establishing the authority of Jesus. That he has the ability not just to say the things that he said in the Sermon on the Mount, but he has the ability to actually carry them out in the way that he lives. And this is important. This is significant. People want to say all the time, well, Jesus' teachings are good and wise living, but I don't believe that Jesus is the Son of God. Or they will take some things from the gospel and ignore others. But you can't do that. Jesus is both the one who speaks these things and also the one who carries them out, who fulfills them and lives up to the standard. Unbelievably impressive. So this chapter is giving these examples of authority. I think that that's the overarching kind of theme here. But let's go back and look at the leper real quick. Think about this leper who comes to him, knelt before him, saying, Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. What does Jesus do? He heals him, but what does he do? Touches him. What happens if you touch a leper under the old law? You're unclean. If you're cooking chicken, you have raw chicken, and you cut the chicken with your knife, do you then use that exact same knife to cut your vegetables? Why not? Because, yeah, whatever disease is on that chicken's now on your vegetables. You pick up the chicken and you handle the chicken and you cut the chicken. Now your knife and your hands are dirty, but who needs soap? That's for weaklings, right? And you just start touching everything else in the kitchen. I can see some of you squirming very uncomfortably thinking about this. You don't do it because you're going to get sick. Chickens are nasty creatures full of all sorts of diseases, and you don't want that. You got to cook it out of it. So if you use a knife to cut the chicken and a cutting board, you immediately soak those things with soap and water, right? You don't want that on the rest of your food. You don't want to get sick. But if the knife is clean and it touches the chicken, why isn't the chicken made clean? If your hand is dirty because you touched, I don't know, car, you're working on the car, and you go in and wipe your hand on a paper towel that's clean, does that make your hand clean and the paper towel clean? Like, does the cleanness rub off? No, the paper towel gets dirty. That's just the way the world works. That's what the old law says. This thing is unclean, and you touch it, now you're unclean. This thing has a disease, you touch it, now you're diseased. What does Jesus do? He touches the man with leprosy, and what happens? Does Jesus now have leprosy? Is he made unclean? No. The man who is unclean with leprosy is cured. He touches the chicken and the disease is gone, right? Like it's unbelievable that Jesus has this kind of power and purity about him, right? And can you imagine the people standing there watching as this leper, who's an outcast of society with an incredibly contagious disease, runs up to Jesus? And he asks to be healed, and everybody watches. And Jesus goes up to the man and touches him. You can almost imagine what is Jesus doing? You know, like, yeah, you don't touch someone with leprosy. My cousin touched a guy with leprosy, and he got leprosy. You don't do it, right? Like, do you remember him? He went to the leper colony to try and feed him, and then he got leprosy and was part of the colony. Like, you just stay away, right? Like, that's what you do. And yet here is Jesus. He can lay his hand on the leper and cure the leper. That's the power and the healing and the purity that he has about him. It's hugely significant, isn't it? Because in what other way, in what other world is that the case? That the clean can touch the unclean and the unclean becomes clean. It flies in the face of the order that God established, which is why the purity laws exist, which is why the washings exist under the law, which is why the leper colonies existed, which is why, doctors wear gloves in hospitals and wash their hands all the time, right? Because disease transfers. And yet Jesus is rewriting the nature of the world. It's a big deal that he can cure the man with leprosy, that he can touch him. But it's also pretty significant, right? This man is an outcast. When is the last time somebody's touched him? I mean, it sounds silly, but sometimes you just need a hug, right? Who's giving this guy a hug? And yet here's Jesus laying his hand on him. Human touch. Jesus isn't afraid of him. He's not scared. He's not shunning him. He heals him. And so, let's connect these things, right? The authority of Jesus being established, that he has power over these things. And so we know now, Jesus teaches this way about the kingdom in the Sermon on the Mount. He has the authority to teach that way as we look at these two examples. But what does Jesus do with his authority? How does he use this power that he has? What way is it directed? To help the poor, to heal the sick. What could Jesus have done with this kind of power and authority? Could have gotten rich. It sounds funny to say, right? Like, because we know that Jesus would never do that. I just saw a news story about two people arrested in Florida at their mansion. They ran some church, and they had like, I don't know, millions and millions of dollars, human trafficking, manipulating people, like horrible stuff, right? And it's like you see that all the time. Like there are people who have a magnetic personality, who can like tap into the wisdom of the Bible and manipulate it enough for their own gain. And people fall for it. Because people are desperate, they're in need of something. And so you get somebody with the right mix of charisma and intelligence and manipulation of words and the right kind of pressure and guilt on people, and they can make themselves great at somebody else's expense, right? See it all the time. Jesus didn't have to manipulate people. He truly had the authority, right? Like he had the power to do that, to create servants, right? To create people who could do his chores and his bidding for him, to create wealth for him. You know, these two church leaders, right? They have call centers where they're like forcing people for like no money to call and like demand money from people, like cold calling over, you know, like Jesus could have set up a call center, right? I don't know what the first century version of a call center is, but he could have done it. Could have sent out his tax collectors. We got to raise money for the kingdom of heaven. And look, it sounds silly and trite to put Jesus in those terms because we know that it is. But it isn't just money or whatever else. He has that kind of authority and that kind of power. Power over the universe. And how does he use it? To heal a leper and a centurion's servant. Right. Yeah, and so the not telling anyone about it, there's always lots of theories about why he did that. Some say time isn't right, depends on the gospel, the different context and stuff. Time hasn't come, to do those things. Here, maybe it's just so the man can go and be cured from the priest and resume society without the baggage of being healed by Jesus. See the blind man in John 6 kind of having to go through a whole rigmarole because of Jesus being the one that cured him and all those things. Don't know the exact reason, but at the very least, it isn't because of the show, right? It's not why Jesus cured people and healed them. Offer the gift that Moses commanded, proof to them, fulfill the law, be returned to society. He just cared about the guy. It's a big deal. So then we talked a little about the faith of the centurion. And one of the things that's remarkable about this too is what Jesus says towards the end of this. I tell you, with no one in Israel have I found such faith. I tell you, many will come from east and west and recline at table with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. They're going to come from all over and be a part of this kingdom. And there's going to be those in the house of Jacob that are thrown into the outer darkness where there's weeping and gnashing of teeth. Right here at the beginning. This is like chapter 8, right? His ministry really just kind of started at the end of chapter 4. We get the Sermon on the Mount, and here he is, and he's already saying the gospel is for all. There's going to be many who come. And those who should be here, they're going to be cast out because they've rejected. What does he mean by faith here? What does faith imply in this context? Faith of this man. It's faith specifically in Jesus and his power and who he is. Like, we talk about faith, that's just, believing in something, right? You have this belief that something exists or whatever. You can have faith in this or that, right? I always think about like Angels in the Outfield. I don't know how many of you saw the kids' movie, Angels in the Outfield. It's great. But at the end of the movie, the whole time the angels are coming and helping the team play better. And then it comes down to the end, and they're trying to win the pennant. And the boy wants to see the angel. And the head angel comes to him, and he's like, look, we can't help you win championships. They have to be won on your own. And so they're like, oh, man, what are we going to do? And the pitcher who apparently blew out his arm is now pitching a complete game and is like late in the ninth inning and he's exhausted. He's played this amazing game and the coach wants to pull him out. And he's like, no, don't pull him out. So they like, what are we going to do? He's like, I've got a plan. All he has to do is believe, right? So the kid does like flaps his wings, says the sign that there's an angel. And the whole stadium, angels in the outfield. And then the guy believes and he throws a pitch and it's hit and he like dives and catches it and they win the game. Because all he had to do was believe, right? And that's the way we think about faith. You just have to believe. You just have to have this inward belief in something, right? Like that's what the movie's saying. That's what people think is you just have to believe. That's not the point. The point isn't just that you believe. It's that you believe in Jesus and his authority. That's what matters. It is much more specific than some generic belief, right? It's not just that you believe in something greater than yourself. You believe in Jesus and his power and his authority. That's what matters. And I think it's important to highlight that's what's demanded, that we believe in those things. Any comments, questions on these first two stories here in chapter 8 before we move on? Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's something really impressive about this faith and this belief in the authority of Jesus that the centurion has. That he's able to make the leap and make the perception. And hopefully that's the same faith that we have, right? Like we read the Bible and we see the way that Jesus taught and we see who God is and we believe in the power and the authority of Jesus. We believe that he was resurrected from the dead. We believe that he will resurrect us. I mean, that's a big leap for people to make, isn't it? That you can read this book and all of a sudden you believe in the supernatural. But the centurion had that kind of belief. I think we have that kind of belief. There's enough evidence within creation itself, within the world that is made, and there's enough need for it. There's a recognition of the problem and the need for salvation, that there's a solution. And this offers that solution. Jesus offers the solution. So we believe. I mean, it's impressive what the centurion believes, but I don't know. I think it's impressive what we believe too. That we can have faith in Jesus as well. I don't know, getting a little bit sidetracked on this, but I think it's important. Like, we get comfortable with the idea that we have to have faith, maybe. We fall into like a pattern of thinking. We're raised in the church or we're converted or whatever point, and we just kind of accept that this is the things that we believe, and and we struggle with it from time to time, like a lot of people do. But it's like, no, you don't doubt, you just believe. And I think it's easy. I don't know, maybe this is a weird point, but like to sell ourselves short in what we have accepted and what we've committed ourselves to. Like, I don't know. You all are here on a Sunday morning listening to a Bible class with a storm outside. Like, it says something about your faith and the desires of your heart that you come and want to listen to the Bible. That you believe. And I think it's important sometimes to think about the steps that we have taken. To, instead of always beating ourselves down about what we're not doing, which there's always more we can do, sometimes it's appropriate to recognize that there is a faith here in Jesus that matters. I don't know, I appreciate you all and your diligence to be here, Bible study. Hopefully you recognize that too. It's not a small thing. It's the right thing. Maybe we can even argue the obvious thing once you've come to understand God and know his character. But it's not a small thing either. So then we get this other story in verse 14. And when Jesus entered Peter's house, he saw his mother-in-law lying sick with a fever. He touched her hand, and the fever left her, and she rose and began to serve him. That evening they brought to him many who were oppressed by demons, and he cast out the spirits with a word and healed all who were sick. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. He took our illnesses and bore our diseases. Interesting story here. More of the same. Touches the unclean woman who is sick and heals her. She's immediately well, better enough to immediately start serving in the house. I had a pretty bad cold Friday. So, I went and bought a grapefruit. I don't like grapefruit, but it's like you feel like you have to suffer a little bit to get better. So I ate a grapefruit, like peeled an orange, ate an orange, bought like these little like juice things, immune boost juice, whatever things at the grocery store. I don't know if any of it matters, but it's like you gotta do something, right? Help with the cold. So you eat your fruit, you drink the little like immune thing that tastes disgusting. That's like $3 and probably a waste of money. You like take your echinacea and you drink your emergency and you like try to do all the things, right, to get better. And for the most part, it worked. I took some NyQuil Friday night, woke up, and NyQuil always makes me really groggy and you feel weird till about like 1 or 2 in the afternoon. But you wake up and you feel better. Sore throat's mostly gone. Stuffiness is mostly gone. You're like pretty good. I didn't do much yesterday though, right? Friday I was sick. Saturday I was recovering. Today, I'm fine, I guess. I don't know. Feel okay. Teaching Bible class. Not stuffy. But it took a day. This woman's healed immediately. There's not a recovery process. Jesus just took the disease and she's fine. But not only that, what's striking to me, the healing is amazing. The way they just bring people to him and he heals them all is incredible. Matthew emphasizes that several times through this gospel. That they just bring him the sick and the oppressed, those with demons, whatever, and he just heals them. The picture that is painted is that Jesus is teaching and healing, and that's what he did during his entire ministry. Who knows how many thousands of people Jesus touched and healed, right? It's incredible that that's what he spent his time doing. But what's really interesting about this section is in verse 17. This was to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet Isaiah. He took our illnesses and bore our diseases. Where in Isaiah is that quote from? Do you have footnotes? What chapter? 53. In what context do we usually talk about Isaiah 53? Lord's Supper. And what's the point that we make? Our spiritual illnesses and our spiritual diseases he has taken away, right? Because that's ultimately the point. But here, Matthew quotes it specifically in the context of what? Physical illnesses being cured. I think it's important that we understand that this is a type of what was to come, right? He cures the physical illnesses as a sign of his ability to cure the spiritual. That's the point that's specifically made with the man that's lowered through the roof, right? He says, your sins are forgiven, and they rebuke him. So what's easier to say? Your sins are forgiven, or take up your bed and walk, but that you may know that I have the authority. I say, now take up your bed and walk. And he takes up his bed and he walks, and like, oh, okay, now we believe that maybe he can forgive sins, right? And so the whole point there is to say he cured people, and that proves he has the power to cure sin. But that's not the only reason why he healed people, right? Was it just because he wanted to establish his power over forgiveness of sins? Why else did he heal people? Because he cared. There's some really difficult things to understand about God and prayer and providence and all those things. But if Jesus didn't care, why would we ever pray to God to heal the sick? We inherently appreciate, don't we, that God actually cares about us now. Sure, ultimately it's about salvation, and our belief is in a better land where there is no illness, right? And we recognize that sometimes bad things happen because we live in a fallen world, and sin exists, and pain and suffering exist, right? But we also believe, don't we, that God looks down, that Jesus looks down on us as somebody who witnessed sin and suffering face to face and has compassion, and that sometimes he does answer our prayer and heal people. And look, we struggle with when he chooses to and when he chooses not to, and we want to know the answers to those things, and we never will, right? We don't know on what basis God chooses to answer those prayers or not, but we still believe, don't we, that Jesus will answer those prayers, that he will intervene to God on our behalf to help cure the sick, to heal the brokenhearted? Because if it was only about eternity, and that's the only thing that mattered, and granted, that's enough, right? Like that, I mean, that's the point of Paul's prayer. Like, my grace is sufficient for you. Like, the grace of God is sufficient for all things. That's enough. To redeem us from sin and to resurrect us in the end, that's enough, whether he does anything else or not. But we also believe, don't we, that God does more than just that? That he can do more, that on occasion he does? That he does intervene in our lives and heal us and cure us on occasion? And we don't know the basis by which he does those things, but to me, that's part of the implication of him quoting this prophecy here. The prophecy wasn't just about, like, sin. It also was about these diseases. He fulfilled it by curing people's diseases. And that's a sign of greater power, but it also shows that God actually does look and care about us and our circumstances and things that we face and the burdens that we bear. And we don't have any guarantees about what prayer he will answer under what context, but do you recognize how significant it is? Do you feel then the connection to God through Jesus, that when we pray, he looks down on us and he recognizes our sin and our pain and our suffering and the sicknesses that we have, and he cares? And maybe in his plan, it isn't time for us to be healed, just like it wasn't for Paul, right? But we know that he cares, and we know that he sees and that he understands. It's a big deal. This Jesus, who cured all these people, who's in Peter's mother-in-law's house, right? Healing the demon-possessed and all these people that are brought to him. This Jesus is the very same Jesus who is in heaven right now interceding on our behalf. Do you recognize that? That's incredibly comforting. I mean, we can imagine somebody like Jesus. You can picture like the movie, the way the movie was made, right? Like, here's Jesus, and people are coming, and he's healing them, and you can imagine the emotions on people as their burdens are lifted, you know, that like now they can stand up straight for the first time in decades, that like their demons that are inside of them are cast out, that they're no longer lepers and ostracized from society. You can imagine the tears of joy that were shed in his presence, right? Like, we can picture all the details of these scenes, and we can see the person then who is doing those things and the reaction that he has to these curings and these healings. That's the same Jesus who's in heaven, who's our advocate to God the Father. That's why the gospel is so powerful. It isn't just that he taught us the way to live and showed us who we're supposed to be and guided us on the path to the kingdom of heaven. It's that he had authority over the earth while he was here to establish his ability to teach such things. And in the midst of all that authority and all that power and all that teaching, he went about curing the sick and the downtrodden and the brokenhearted. He saw those things. And now he's in heaven, interceding on our behalf. And again, there's no guarantee here about what prayer he answers when or why. I can't pretend to understand those things. But at the very least, we know that if he doesn't answer a prayer, it's not because he doesn't care. It's not because he doesn't understand. It's because he has more authority and power and understanding than we do. Pretty powerful. And then, verse 18, now when Jesus saw a crowd around him, he gave orders to go over to the other side. And a scribe came up and said to him, "Teacher, I will follow wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." And another of the disciples said to him, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." And Jesus said to him, "Follow me and leave the dead to bury their own dead." What are the things that you do every day, whether you're like on vacation or not, right? Like, I think most people probably have like a morning routine that they like to follow. Generally speaking, there's a few things you like to do every day. It's part of your cup of coffee, right? Probably pretty normal. You're going to have coffee whether you are on vacation or not. I went camping in February. You know what? I brought coffee. I had coffee in the morning, a little bit of coffee. Just part of the day, part of waking up, part of the thing that you do. And it's nice. What would it take for you to not have your coffee in the morning? Like what phone call do you have to get? Like who's in the hospital, right? So from a Jewish perspective, this is my understanding. They would say their prayers in the morning. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. It's like fundamental to their practice as Jews to say that prayer in the morning. The only thing that really superseded that in terms of priority was to make sure that you buried the dead and took care of them. That was of the utmost importance. That is the primary thing, that you do that first, that you take care of your father, bury them, all those things. And here, that's the very example that's given. Lord, let me first go and bury my father. Like this is the most important thing, right? And Jesus' response is, follow me and let the dead bury the dead. The thing that is most significant to you, that is of the highest priority, right? Somebody's in the hospital, you have to go see him. He says, no, you follow me first. And look, maybe the point is that the father is elderly and not actually dead yet, and he's trying to delay this for several years. When the time is right, then I will go. Whether that's the case or it's immediate, it doesn't really matter, right? What Jesus is saying is if you're going to follow me, you do it now. That this is of the utmost, foremost priority. And by the way, following me means you don't have a place to lay your head. You don't have a bed. You don't have a home. And this is interesting. We just had this meeting last weekend on Hebrews 11. What was the point of emphasis with Moses and Abraham and Abel and all those? That they believed in a better land and they didn't achieve. They didn't get to see it. Moses had to look from outside Canaan on a mountaintop. Abraham lived in a tent his whole life. That's the parallel, isn't it? That you recognize that you are a stranger and a wayfarer. That you're a pilgrim. That we're wandering, that we're on a journey. And that's what he says. That's what the Son of Man is like. This world was not his home. And so as much as we emphasized in the last section the idea of Jesus caring about people, here there's almost the other point, that there's something greater to come. And that's the perspective that you have. And that it's worth everything, that you drop everything to attain that blessing. But we get to this last section, or I guess we have two more sections. We get to this next story. He gets in the boat, the disciples follow him, and behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves, but he was asleep. And they went and woke him, saying, Save us, Lord, we are perishing. And he said to them, Why are you afraid, O you of little faith? Then he rose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm, and the men marveled, saying, What sort of man is this that even winds and sea obey him? There's like levels to things, right? I don't know. Think about an athlete or something. Growing up, play sports, and it's like, this kid's the best athlete in the school, right? And he's just moves a little different than everybody else, a little bit faster, right? Jumps a little higher. But you get to the county level, he's probably not the best player in the county. There's somebody else who's even better. And then you think about like the best players in high school. There's a huge jump between whatever kid's best at our little school and the best high school player. And that kid is nothing compared to the greatest in the world. There's like levels to this, right? And there's some things that are just different, and you see it and you just know. Remember when I was at Florida College, USF practice gym was down, so they came and played in the FC gym. And some of the guys on the team got to scrimmage with them. And, pretty good basketball players, Florida College team. They weren't Division I, though. And Dominique Jones played for USF at the time. He led the Big East in scoring at the time. Incredible basketball player. Well, you watch Dominique Jones play up close and personal, it's completely different. I mean, the pace, the speed, the athleticism, the thing that stands out, how hard they pass the ball, right? The ball there's just a little bit more fire to it, the way that it moves. Just different. Just a different league, just something completely different. I think we get a sense of that with Jesus' miracles here a little bit. It's like, oh, you teach with this authority, that's impressive, and you marvel. He's healing people of their diseases. That's impressive, that he can cure people. Now he rebukes the winds and the waves. It's unbelievable, isn't it? I mean, we live in Florida. We see storms all the time. We get these like world-shaking storms sometimes where your windows rattle and the thunder and the lightning and the wind's blowing. Sometimes it's not even the hurricanes that seem that bad. It's like the tropical storms that come through, and you get like 3 hours where you're like, the world is ending, right? Like there's lightning everywhere. The trees are blowing over. It's like storming. You're like, this is bad. But it moves over and it's gone. Can you imagine in the midst of that going outside and say, stop it? And it just, sun comes out. I mean, there's levels to authority. And I think the disciples are starting to recognize that. They have not fully appreciated who Jesus is. And they keep getting glimpses as he goes of the kind of power that this man actually has. Like they're amazed at the way that he can cure the sick. And they're following him. They've given up everything to come after Jesus. But here, he rebukes the wind and the waves. And by the way, they get a good rebuke for it. Jesus rebukes them. Do you not have enough faith? Do you not know who I am and what the circle? You think that this is the way that we're going to die? Jesus knows how he's going to die. And it's not going to be by a storm, right? Nothing like that's going to take his life. It's going to be him voluntarily giving it away. But this mixture between the rebuke that Jesus gives on the disciples and his authority over the wind and the waves has always been a little bit funny to me. He expects them to know that he has this kind of power. And it's like, how could you expect anybody to know he has this kind of power? Well, go back to the centurion earlier in the chapter. He understood the sort of authority. You have the authority to command things, to say things, and it happens. That's what Jesus demonstrates here. We're running out of time. We have to get through this last story. When came to the other side, to the country of the Gadarenes, 2 demon-possessed men met him, coming out of the tombs, so fierce that no one could pass that way. And behold, they cried out, "What have you to do with us, O Son of God? Have you come here to torment us before the time?" Now a herd of many pigs was feeding at some distance from them, and the demons begged him, saying, "If you cast us out, send us away into the herd of pigs." And he said to them, "Go." So they came out and went into the pigs, and behold, the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the waters. The herdsmen fled, and going into the city, they told everything, especially what had happened to the demon-possessed men. And behold, all the city came out to meet Jesus, and when they saw him, they begged him to leave their region. There's a lot I don't understand about the story. I'll be honest. Mark's version's almost equally troubling, if not more so. I don't know why they want to go in the pigs. I don't know why he allows them to go into the pigs. I don't know why once they're in the pigs, they run off the side of the cliff and die. To be honest, I just don't know. I remember years ago, I was like, I'm going to figure this out. And I grabbed like every commentary I could and read everything I could. I couldn't figure it out. I don't have an answer to those questions. Maybe somebody does. If you all do, please let me know. I do think the point here is this continuing theme of his authority, though. That the demons immediately recognize his authority. And that he has the authority to command them where they can or cannot go. He lets them go to their own demise in the pigs, right? And the people there, they recognize this authority, they hear this story, and they're afraid. Which is, in some ways, a reasonable response, maybe. That Jesus has this kind of power, this kind of authority to control even the powers of darkness that have taken over these 2 men's lives. And of course, there's some, Luke and Mark, there's 1 man, and here there's 2, and there's all sorts of, that's a whole nother conversation as well. But I think the point here in Matthew is Jesus has the authority even over the demons. And they recognize it and quake before him. And they have to ask Jesus for permission. And Jesus is the one that gives permission. He has authority even over they. So in this chapter, Jesus has the authority over sickness and disease. Jesus has authority over nature itself, even at a distance, right? Jesus has the authority to heal. Fulfilling prophecy, he heals. But to follow Jesus means that you sacrifice everything, that you recognize that he is of the utmost priority because he has the authority over nature and over demons and over the black darkness of the world, right? And so here we get the message of Jesus in the kingdom in the Sermon on the Mount. And here in chapter 8, we get the authority of Jesus. And we're going to see the similar sort of thing in chapter 9. Same sort of thing. Appreciate your attention. Sorry I didn't engage you all much in conversation this morning. It's tough when we've got, 40 verses or whatever to try and cover in a class. But appreciate your attention. and we'll pick up in chapter 9 next week.